I remember that day like it was yesterday, though 9 years have passed. The autumn leaves were falling across St. Catherine's Orphanage grounds when Sister Margaret visited. I was the new social worker assigned to the facility, just 3 months into the job and still learning the ropes in Boston's child welfare system. Sister Margaret wasn't like the other nuns I'd met. In her late 50s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, she had this way of connecting with the children that seemed almost magical, though there was nothing supernatural about it. Just decades of compassion and experience. She volunteered twice weekly, reading to the younger kids and counseling the teenagers. "Mr. Brennan," she said that afternoon, catching me in the hallway, "could I speak with you about Tommy? I'm concerned about his nightmares." Tommy was 7, a quiet boy who'd arrived 6 months earlier after losing his parents in a car accident. We stepped into my cramped office, where case files were stacked so high they threatened to topple. Sister Margaret sat across from me, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "He drew this today," she said, sliding a crayon drawing across my desk. It showed a small house with a red door and yellow flowers. Nothing alarming, but Sister Margaret pointed to a dark shadow in the window. When I asked about it, he shut down completely. We talked for nearly an hour about Tommy's progress and potential therapy options. Then, Sister Margaret checked her watch and stood up. "I need to visit one more place before heading back to St. Mary's," she said. "There's a family in Dorchester I've been helping. Their daughter might be a good fit for our education scholarship." That was the last time anyone saw Sister Margaret Ryan. Her car was found the next morning, parked near Franklin Park. Her purse was still inside, along with her phone. No signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play. The police investigation yielded nothing. No witnesses, no suspects, no Sister Margaret. The disappearance made local headlines for a few weeks. The children at St. Catherine's made cards hoping for her return. The other nuns organized prayer vigils. I joined the volunteer search parties that combed the parks and neighborhoods. But eventually, like most mysteries without resolution, public interest faded. Life at the orphanage continued. New volunteers came. Children were fostered or adopted. I stayed on at St. Catherine's, promoted to Director of Social Services after 2 years. Tommy eventually found a foster home with a kind couple from Cambridge. Sister Margaret became a memory, a sad story, an unsolved case gathering dust in a police archive. Until today, 9 years later, when I received a call from Tommy's adoptive mother that would change everything. "Mr. Brennan, it's about Tommy. He's been drawing something strange. I think you should see it." I didn't understand the urgency in her voice then. I couldn't have known how a child's crayon drawing would pull me back into a mystery I'd long given up trying to solve. I drove to Cambridge on a rainy Wednesday afternoon, wipers beating a steady rhythm against the windshield as I navigated through Boston traffic. Tommy's adoptive parents, the Caldwells, lived in a brownstone near the Harvard Square. Academically accomplished people who'd opened their home to a troubled boy 5 years ago. Sarah Caldwell met me at the door, anxiety etched across her face. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Brennan. David's still at the university, but Tommy's upstairs in his room. He goes by Tom now," she added as she led me inside. "He's 16, you know how they are at that age." The house was warm and lived in. Books stacked on coffee tables, framed family photos on the walls. A normal home. I'd visited twice during the first year after Tommy's placement. Standard follow-ups to ensure the transition was going smoothly. Everything had been perfect. "He's been having nightmares again," Sarah said, lowering her voice as we climbed the stairs. "They started about a month ago. He won't talk about them, but he's been drawing obsessively." We paused outside a bedroom door decorated with basketball posters and a "Keep Out" sign. Typical teenage territory. "Tom?" Sarah knocked gently. "Mr. Brennan is here." The door opened to reveal a lanky teenager with shaggy brown hair falling across his forehead. Recognition flickered in his eyes. "Mr. B, long time no see." "Good to see you, Tom," I said, still adjusting to the transformation from the small, traumatized 7-year-old I'd known to this almost man standing before me. Sarah excused herself, murmuring something about making tea, leaving us alone. Tom's room was surprisingly tidy. Bed made, desk organized, basketball trophies lined up on a shelf. "Your mom mentioned you've been having some rough nights," I began, easing into the conversation. Tom shrugged, dropped onto the edge of his bed. "Just dreams." "She also mentioned drawings?" He stared at me for a long moment, then reached under his bed and pulled out a sketchbook. "I don't know why I keep drawing this. I don't even remember doing some of them." He handed me the book and I flipped it open. Page after page showed variations of the same image. A simple house with a distinctive porch surrounded by trees. Some drawings included a small pond nearby. The later sketches became more detailed, adding a stone path, a weather vane on the roof, specific patterns of windows. "This place," I began, a strange feeling settling in my stomach. "I've never been there," Tom said flatly. "At least, I don't think I have. But it feels familiar, like I've seen it before." I turned another page and froze. There, drawn in careful detail, was a figure standing by the house. A woman in what could only be interpreted as a nun's habit. "Tom," I said carefully, "do you remember Sister Margaret from St. Catherine's?" His brow furrowed. "The nun who disappeared?" "Vaguely. I was pretty young. Why did you draw her here? Is that who that is?" He leaned forward, studying the image. I kept seeing this woman in my dreams standing by the house. She's trying to tell me something, but I can never hear what it is." I stared at the drawing, a chill running down my spine despite the warm room. Tom couldn't possibly remember the details of Sister Margaret's appearance with such accuracy after 9 years. Yet there she was, her gentle eyes and wire-rimmed glasses unmistakable. Has anything else triggered these dreams? Anything unusual happen recently? Tom hesitated, then walked to his desk and pulled out a small wooden box. "I found this at a yard sale a few weeks ago. The dreams started after I brought it home." He placed it in my hands, a simple, hand-carved box with a tree etched on the lid. I opened it to find a tarnished silver medal inside, the kind given for religious education. "It reminded me of St. Catherine somehow," Tom said. "I don't know why I bought it." I turned the medal over. Engraved on the back was a single word: faith. And suddenly, I remembered something Sister Margaret had once told me. "Sometimes, faith leads us down unexpected paths, Mr. Brennan. The trick is to keep following, even when you can't see where you're going." I looked back at the drawing of the house, a place neither of us recognized, but that now seemed profoundly important. "Tom," I said slowly, "I think we need to find this house." The Caldwell's kitchen was warm and bright, a sharp contrast to the thoughts swirling in my mind. Sarah placed a mug of coffee in front of me while Tom spread his drawings across the table. "I understand your concern," I told Sarah after explaining the situation, "but these drawings might be significant. The resemblance to Sister Margaret is uncanny." "You think this house is connected to her disappearance?" Sarah asked, skepticism evident in her voice. I couldn't blame her. It sounded far-fetched even to me. "I don't know," I admitted. "But Tom's subconscious is clearly processing something, and as his former caseworker, I feel responsible to help figure out what I want to help, Tom insisted, his voice carrying the determination only teenagers can muster. These dreams feel important. Sarah sighed, the protective mother weighing risks against her son's obvious need for resolution. David and I will discuss it, but no adventures without our knowledge, understood? After promising to keep them informed of any developments, I gathered the most detailed drawings and left with a plan forming. My first stop was St. Mary's Convent, where Sister Margaret had lived. The convent was smaller than I remembered, a modest brick building attached to the parish church. Sister Josephine, now in her 70s, welcomed me into a sparse visiting room. "Michael Brennan," she smiled, recognition lighting her face. "It's been years." "Too long, sister," I agreed. "I'm here about Margaret Ryan." Her smile dimmed. 9 years this October. We still pray for answers. I showed her Tom's drawings, explaining his connection to Sister Margaret and the recent nightmares. Sister Josephine studied them carefully, her gnarled fingers tracing the outline of the house. "This looks like..." She paused, brow furrowed. "Wait here." She returned moments later with a photo album. Margaret grew up in western Massachusetts, in the Berkshires. Her family had a summer cabin near a lake. She flipped through yellowed photographs until she found what she was looking for. A faded color print showing a young Margaret standing in front of a small house with a distinctive porch. "Is this it?" I asked, heart racing as I compared it to Tom's drawing. "No," Sister Josephine said, deflating my excitement. "Similar style, but definitely not the same house." We spent the next hour going through Sister Margaret's personal effects that had been preserved at the convent. Letters, journals, photographs. Nothing matched the house in Tom's drawings. There was a box of her things from her classroom at St. Francis School, Sister Josephine mentioned as I prepared to leave. "It's probably in storage. I can have someone look for it." "I'd appreciate that," I said, handing her my card with my cell number scribbled on the back. My next stop was the Boston Police Department. Detective Carlos Rivera had been the lead investigator on Sister Margaret's case and was now a lieutenant nearing retirement. "The Ryan case," he sighed, rubbing his salt and pepper mustache after I explained my visit. "Still bothers me. One of the few that got away." We sat in his cluttered office, reviewing the case file. Sister Margaret's credit cards and bank accounts had never been touched after her disappearance. Her passport remained unused. No one matching her description had been admitted to any hospitals. The investigation had hit dead end after dead end. "We looked at that family she mentioned visiting in Dorchester," Rivera said, flipping through his notes. "The Kellers. Mother and 2 kids living in a second-floor apartment. Checked out completely. Sister Margaret had been helping the daughter apply for a scholarship just like she said. Did she make it to their apartment that day? That's the thing. She did. Mrs. Keller confirmed Sister Margaret visited around 4:30 p.m., stayed about an hour discussing the daughter's application. Nothing unusual. She was the last known person to see Sister Margaret. I showed him Tom's drawings. Rivera studied them with professional detachment. Could be significant, could be nothing. The mind works in strange ways, especially with childhood trauma, but he hesitated, then pulled out a map. Her car was found here, near Franklin Park. If she left the Keller's apartment and headed back toward the convent, she wouldn't have gone near the park. It was out of her way. So she made another stop, I suggested. That's always been my theory. But where? And why? Rivera handed me his card. Let me know if the boy remembers anything else. Sometimes it just takes one detail to break a case wide open. Driving home that evening, I felt both energized and frustrated. Tom's drawings had to be significant. The timing, the details of Sister Margaret's appearance. But how could he know about a place he'd never seen? And how was I supposed to find a nondescript house that could be anywhere? My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Sister Josephine's voice came through the speaker, excitement evident despite the late hour. "Michael, we found that box from Sister Margaret's classroom. There's something you should see right away." The next morning, I arrived at St. Mary's Convent just as the early sun cast long shadows across the grounds. Sister Josephine was waiting for me in the small conference room. A cardboard box labeled Senior Margaret Ryan, St. Francis School, on the table before her. "I couldn't believe it when I saw it," she said, reaching into the box and pulling out a stack of children's artwork. "These are drawings from her students' final project before she disappeared." She spread them across the table. Crayon landscapes created by third graders 9 years ago. Most were typical child art: wobbly houses, stick figure families, bright yellow suns in the corner. But one drawing made my breath catch. A small house with a distinctive porch. A pond nearby, trees surrounding it. "Who drew this?" I asked, picking up the faded paper. Sister Josephine checked the back where a name was written in Sister Margaret's neat handwriting. Tommy Brenner, age 7. "Tom," I whispered. "The similarity to his current drawings is remarkable," Sister Josephine agreed. But how could he draw the same house 9 years apart? And why? I studied the childhood drawing more carefully. Unlike Tom's recent detailed sketches, this one contained additional elements. A swing hanging from a tree branch, flowers along a path, and what looked like a small shed behind the house. "Did Sister Margaret ever mention this place to you?" I asked. "Not that I recall," Sister Josephine said. "But there's more." She pulled out a folder containing Sister Margaret's lesson plans. The assignment was draw your safe place, real or imagined. Most children drew their homes or playgrounds, but according to her notes, Tommy told her he'd never seen this place before. It just appeared in his head. I felt a chill despite the warm room. So even back then, he was drawing a place he couldn't have known. "There's something else you should see," Sister Josephine said, reaching deeper into the box. She pulled out a small leather-bound journal. This was Margaret's personal journal. I've only skimmed it, but there's an entry from the day before she disappeared that mentions Tommy. She opened to a marked page and handed it to me. Sister Margaret's handwriting flowed across the paper. September 14, 2016. Tommy drew the most remarkable picture today. When I asked him about it, he said it was a place where sad people go to feel better. Something about his description struck me. Could it be the Walden property? The resemblance is uncanny, though Tommy couldn't possibly know about it. I should speak with Mr. Brennan about Tommy's progress tomorrow when I visit St. Catherine's. Perhaps it's time to consider the Walden House program for some of our special cases. My pulse quickened. Walden House? Does that mean anything to you? Sister Josephine shook her head. I've never heard Margaret mention it. But look at the final entry. I turned the page to read Sister Margaret's last written words. September 15th, 2016. Discuss Tommy with Mr. Brennan today. After my visit to the Kellers, I'll drive out to Walden House. It's been years since I've been there, and I need to see if it's still suitable. If my suspicions are correct, it could change everything. The journal ended there. Sister Margaret had vanished that very evening. She was going to this Walden House after visiting the Kellers, I said, pieces falling into place. That's why her car was found near Franklin Park. It wasn't out of her way. It was en route to wherever this place is. But where is Walden House, and what connection does it have to Tommy? Sister Josephine asked. I took photos of Tommy's childhood drawing and the journal entries with my phone. I don't know yet, but I think I know how to find out. I thanked Sister Josephine and drove straight to Lieutenant Rivera's office. He listened intently as I shared my discoveries. Walden House, he repeated, typing it into his computer. Nothing in our database matches that name in connection with Sister Margaret. Could it be related to Walden Pond in Concord? I suggested. Possibly. Thoreau's Walden is famous enough. Rivera picked up his desk phone. Let me make a few calls. While he worked his police contacts, I searched online for any rehabilitation centers, retreat houses, or social service facilities called Walden House in Massachusetts. Several facilities use the name, but none seemed connected to Sister Margaret or the Catholic Church. After an hour of searching, Rivera put down his phone. Got something. 9 years ago, the Archdiocese of Boston owned a property called Walden Retreat House in Lincoln, about 5 miles from Walden Pond. It was used as a spiritual retreat center until 2010, then sat vacant for several years. The Archdiocese sold it in 2017. A year after Sister Margaret disappeared, I noted. Here's the interesting part, Rivera continued. I spoke with the diocesan property manager. Apparently, before it closed, Walden House was occasionally used for a pilot program to help traumatized children, a joint project between Catholic Charities and Boston Children's Hospital. The pieces were starting to fit together. Sister Margaret mentioned the Walden House program for special cases in her journal. The property manager's emailing me the address and some photos. Should be here any minute. We waited in tense silence until Rivera's computer chimed with an incoming message. He opened the email and clicked on the attached photos. There it was, a modest house with a wide porch, nestled among tall pines, with a small pond visible in the background, exactly as Tom had drawn it, both as a child and now as a teenager. That's it, I said, a mixture of excitement and apprehension washing over me. That's the house from Tom's drawings. The house is still there, Rivera said, reading the email. The new owner is listed as the Northeastern Mindfulness Institute. They use it as a meditation retreat center now. I stared at the photo, questions multiplying. How did Tom know about this place? Why had Sister Margaret been heading there the day she vanished? And most importantly, what happened to her after she arrived? I need to see this place, I said finally. Rivera nodded, grabbing his jacket. I'll drive. The drive to Lincoln took nearly an hour, winding through Boston's crowded suburbs before the landscape gradually shifted to the wooded calm of Middlesex County. Lieutenant Rivera and I barely spoke, both lost in our thoughts as the implications of our discovery settled in. I'd called Sarah Caldwell before we left, explaining what we'd found and asking her permission to share the information with Tom when we returned. He had a session with his therapist this morning, she'd said. They discussed the drawings. She thinks there might be some kind of repressed memory at work. Now, as we turned onto a narrow road lined with maple trees beginning to show their fall colors, I wondered what memory could connect Tom to a place he'd supposedly never visited. Should be just ahead, Rivera said, checking the GPS. Property records show it's about 3 acres, backing up to conservation land. The gravel driveway appeared suddenly between 2 stone pillars, a discreet sign reading Northeastern Mindfulness Institute mounted on one. As we drove up the winding path, the trees opened to reveal the house from Tom's drawings. A 2-story colonial with a distinctive wide porch, weathered gray shingles and white trim. A few cars were parked in a small lot to the side. They're definitely open, Rivera noted as we parked. Remember, we're just making preliminary inquiries. No accusations, no mention of Sister Margaret yet. Let's see what we learn first. The front door opened before we reached it, revealing a woman in her 40s with short gray hair and a serene expression. "Welcome to Northeastern Mindfulness. I'm Dr. Eleanor West, the director. Are you here for the afternoon session?" Rivera showed his badge. "Lieutenant Carlos Rivera, Boston Police. This is Michael Brennan from St. Catherine's Children's Services. We're hoping to ask a few questions about this property." If Dr. West was concerned about police presence, she didn't show it. "Of course, please come in." She led us to a comfortable office with large windows overlooking the pond. "We've been operating here for 7 years. Is there a problem?" "No problem," I assured her. "We're researching the history of this property, specifically when it was known as Walden Retreat House. Before my time, I'm afraid. We purchased it from the Archdiocese in 2017. It was quite run down then. We've done extensive renovations." She gestured around the bright, airy room. "Why the interest in the old retreat house?" I exchanged a glance with Rivera, who gave a slight nod. "We're investigating a cold case that might be connected to this location," I explained. "Did you receive any records from the previous program when you purchased the property?" "Very little. Some furniture remained, and boxes of old files in the basement that we donated to the Archdiocese archives." Dr. West studied us with increasing curiosity. "What kind of case?" "A missing person," Rivera said carefully. "We believe she may have visited this property shortly before her disappearance 9 years ago." Dr. West's expression changed subtly. "You're talking about the nun, aren't you? Sister Margaret Ryan?" The directness of her response surprised us both. "You knew her?" I asked. "No, but I knew of her case. When we were renovating, one of the contractors mentioned the property had some bad juju because of a missing nun." Dr. West leaned forward. "We looked into it naturally. There were rumors locally that she'd been heading here the day she vanished, but the police investigation apparently found nothing." "That's correct," Rivera confirmed. "The property was searched at the time. No evidence was found connecting Sister Margaret's disappearance to this location." "May we look around?" I asked. "Both inside and the grounds." Dr. West hesitated. "We have participants arriving for a retreat in 2 hours. I can give you an hour now, or you can come back tomorrow when we're between sessions." "An hour is fine," Rivera said. "We appreciate your cooperation." Dr. West gave us a brief tour of the house. The interior had been completely modernized. Meditation rooms with bamboo flooring, a commercial kitchen, simple dormitory-style bedrooms upstairs. Nothing remained of the Catholic retreat center it had once been. "The basement is primarily storage now," Dr. West said, leading us down a narrow staircase. "This is the one area we haven't fully renovated yet." The basement was partially finished, with concrete floors and exposed stone foundation walls in some sections. Metal shelving units lined the walls, holding supplies for the retreat center. "That door leads to the old furnace room," Dr. West pointed. "And through there is a small room that might have been an office once. Feel free to look around. I need to prepare for our incoming group, but I'll be upstairs if you need anything." Once she left, Rivera and I began a methodical examination of the basement. The furnace room contained nothing but modern HVAC equipment. The small office was empty except for a metal desk and file cabinet. "Nothing here," Rivera said, closing the empty file drawer. "Let's check outside before our time runs out." We exited through a basement door that led to the backyard. The property sloped gently down to the small pond Tom had included in his drawings. A wooden dock extended into the water, and several meditation platforms were positioned among the trees. "It's peaceful," I commented as we walked the grounds. "I can see why it would make a good retreat center." Or a good place to hide something, Rivera said grimly, his detective's instincts clearly engaged. The property backs up to hundreds of acres of conservation land. If someone wanted to conceal evidence, he didn't need to finish the thought. We both knew the statistics on missing persons cases. After 9 years, we weren't likely searching for Sister Margaret, but for answers about what happened to her. We circled the pond, finding nothing unusual. As we approached a small tool shed near the tree line, Rivera's phone rang. "Rivera," he answered, then listened intently. "You're sure? When was this?" "Send it to my email right away." He hung up, his expression tense. That was my office. They've been running background checks on everyone associated with the former Walden House program. One name just flagged in the system: Dr. James Whitman, the psychiatrist who ran the children's program here. He was arrested 3 years ago in Vermont for financial fraud related to a different therapy center he was operating. "What's the connection?" I asked. "He's currently out on parole, living in New Hampshire. And get this, he was questioned during the original investigation into Sister Margaret's disappearance. He told detectives he barely knew her and hadn't seen her in months before she vanished. But Sister Margaret's journal suggests otherwise," I said. "She was specifically coming to check on the Walden House program." "Exactly. And here's the kicker. Police in Vermont found financial records during their fraud investigation showing Dr. Whitman received regular payments from a Catholic charities account managed by Sister Margaret Ryan for 2 years before her disappearance." The implications hung in the air between us. Sister Margaret had been connected to Dr. Whitman and this property, and she'd disappeared on her way to visit it. "We need to talk to Whitman," I said. Rivera nodded. "I'm having the case officially reopened based on this new evidence. We'll get a warrant to question him formally." He glanced at his watch. "Our hour's almost up. Let's head back." As we walked toward the house, I paused to look back at the serene setting. The pond reflecting the afternoon sun, the trees swaying gently in the breeze. On the surface, it was exactly the safe place Tom had drawn as a child. But something had happened here 9 years ago. Something that had connected Sister Margaret, Dr. Whitman, and a 7-year-old orphan named Tommy Brenner, in a mystery that was only now beginning to unravel. And I couldn't shake the feeling that we were still missing the most important piece of the puzzle. The drive back to Boston was tense with possibility. Rivera was on his phone most of the way, speaking with his captain about reopening Sister Margaret's case and arranging to interview Dr. Whitman in New Hampshire. "They're sending officers to his residence now," Rivera informed me as we approached the city. "Given his parole status, we don't need a warrant to question him initially." "Do you think he's directly involved in her disappearance?" I asked. "Too early to say, but financial fraud and missing funds connected to Sister Margaret's accounts? That's a solid motive." Rivera's expression was grim. 9 years is a long time, but people have been convicted on older evidence. We agreed to meet the following morning. I had another priority, updating Tom and his parents about our discoveries. The Caldwells were waiting when I arrived at their Cambridge home, concern evident on their faces. "Tom's therapist thinks these drawings might be connected to repressed trauma," David Caldwell explained once we were seated in their living room. He was a psychology professor at Harvard, his academic demeanor balanced by genuine paternal worry. "We need to proceed carefully." I shared what we'd learned. The existence of Walden House, Sister Margaret's journal entries, Tom's childhood drawing of the same place, and the potential connection to Dr. Whitman's program. "So, this place really exists," Tom said quietly when I finished. He'd been sitting silently, absorbing every word. "And I drew it when I was 7, before Sister Margaret disappeared." "Yes," I confirmed. What we don't understand is how you knew about it. The records show you were never part of the Walden House program." Tom frowned, concentration etching lines in his young face. "I've been trying to remember anything about that time, but it's all foggy. My earliest clear memories are from St. Catherine's, after my parents died. Tom's biological parents were killed in a car accident when he was 6, I explained to Rivera. He was in the vehicle but survived with minor injuries. He spent a month in the hospital before coming to St. Catherine's." "Which hospital?" Rivera asked. "Boston Children's," Sarah replied. "It's in his adoption records." Rivera and I exchanged significant looks. The Walden House program was a joint project between Catholic Charities and Boston Children's Hospital, I said slowly. "You think I might have been part of that program?" Tom asked, leaning forward. "It's possible," I admitted. "You were the right age and you'd experienced severe trauma, but there's no record of it in your St. Catherine's file." "The hospital would have records," David suggested. "As his legal guardians, we can request them." "That could take days through official channels," Rivera said. "I might be able to expedite things through the investigation." While Rivera made calls, I showed Tom and his parents the photographs of Walden House. Tom studied them intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. "It's so familiar," he murmured. "Like I've walked through those rooms, but the memory is just out of reach." "Your therapist mentioned the possibility of repressed memories," I said carefully. "Sometimes traumatic experiences can be blocked by the mind as a protection mechanism." "Dr. Patterson suggested hypnotherapy might help," Sarah added. "She knows a specialist." Tom looked up, determination in his eyes. "I want to try it. If I was there, if I saw something that could help find out what happened to Sister Margaret, I need to remember." His parents exchanged concerned glances. "Let's discuss it with Doctor Patterson first," David said. "This isn't something to rush into." Rivera returned, excitement evident in his usually stoic demeanor. "We've got something. Boston Children's Hospital just confirmed that Tommy Brenner was part of a special trauma therapy pilot program after his parents' accident. The program was run by Dr. James Whitman and took place at a facility in Lincoln." "Walden House," I said, the pieces clicking into place. "The records show he attended 6 weekend sessions over a 2-month period, accompanied by a social worker from the hospital." Rivera checked his notes. "The program ended 3 months before he was placed at St. Catherine's." Tom sat very still, his face pale. "Why don't I remember any of this?" "Childhood memories can be fragile," David explained gently, "especially around traumatic periods. Your brain was processing the loss of your parents, the accident, the hospital stay. It's not surprising some details got lost." "But I drew the house," Tom insisted, "both then and now. Why would I remember the place but nothing that happened there?" "That's what we need to find out," I said. "The hospital records confirm you were there, but they don't tell us what connection it might have to Sister Margaret's disappearance 9 years later." Rivera's phone rang again. He answered, listened briefly, then hung up with a grim expression. "Officers just spoke with Dr. Whitman in New Hampshire. He's denying any contact with Sister Margaret around the time of her disappearance and claims he has no idea why she would have been coming to Walden House that day. He's agreed to a formal interview tomorrow at the station." "I want to be there," I said immediately. "That can be arranged," Rivera agreed. "But there's something else." My team did a deep background check on Whitman. After his arrest in Vermont, investigators found evidence that he'd been falsifying treatment records and billing for services never rendered for years, possibly including during his time at Walden House. So the program Tom attended, Sarah began. May not have been what it appeared to be, Rivera finished. We're getting a warrant to access all of Whitman's records related to the Walden House program now. Tom stood suddenly, pacing the room. This is crazy. You're saying I was part of some fake treatment program run by a criminal? And somehow Sister Margaret found out about it and then disappeared. We don't know that yet, I cautioned. But it's a lead we need to investigate. I want to go there, Tom declared. To Walden House. Maybe being there will help me remember. His parents immediately protested, but Tom persisted. Mom, Dad, I've been drawing this place for weeks without knowing it was real. Now we find out I actually spent time there as a kid. What if I saw something important? What if I could help solve what happened to Sister Margaret? The room fell silent as his parents considered his plea. Finally, David spoke. Let's compromise. We'll schedule the hypnotherapy session, Doctor, Patterson recommended. If that yields any useful memories, then we can discuss visiting the actual location. Tom looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded in agreement. When can we do it? I'll call Dr. Patterson now, Sarah said, reaching for her phone. Remarkably, the specialist Dr. Patterson recommended had an opening the following morning. It was agreed that Tom would see Dr. Eleanor Chen at 9 a.m. with both his parents present. Rivera and I would interview Dr. Whitman at the police station afterward. As I prepared to leave, Tom pulled me aside in the hallway. Mr. Brennan, he said quietly, his voice steady despite the emotional day. If I remember something bad, you'll be there, right? I placed a hand on his shoulder, struck by how tall he'd grown. I'll be there, Tom. Whatever you remember, we'll face it together. The weight of his trust settled on me as I drove home through the darkening streets. Whatever connection existed between Tom, Sister Margaret, and Walden House, I was now irrevocably part of it. Sleep came fitfully that night, my dreams filled with images of a gray-shingled house beside a pond, and the kind face of a nun who had vanished without a trace. The next morning dawned gray and drizzly, matching my mood as I drove to Dr. Chen's office in Brookline. Located in a converted Victorian home, her practice specialized in trauma therapy and memory recovery. The Caldwells were already in the waiting room when I arrived, Tom sitting between his parents, leg bouncing nervously. Thank you for coming, Sarah said, the dark circles under her eyes suggesting she'd slept as poorly as I had. Dr. Chen emerged from her office moments later, a petite woman with a calm demeanor and observant eyes. After introductions, she explained the process. Hypnotherapy isn't like what you see in movies, she told Tom. You'll remain aware and in control throughout the session. I'll simply guide you into a deeply relaxed state where memories might be more accessible. Could I create false memories? Tom asked, revealing he'd done his research. I read, that can happen. That's a valid concern, Doctor. Chen acknowledged, which is why we'll proceed carefully without leading questions. We're not trying to implant suggestions, just create space for your own memories to emerge. Tom nodded, satisfied. We moved to Dr. Chen's office, a comfortable room with soft lighting and a reclining chair positioned before large windows overlooking a garden. Sarah and David sat on a small sofa against one wall, while I took a chair in the corner, trying to be as unobtrusive as possible. I'll be recording this session with your permission, Doctor, Chen said, setting up a small device on her desk. It can be helpful to review afterwards. With everyone's agreement, the session began. Dr. Chen's voice took on a rhythmic quality as she guided Tom through progressive relaxation techniques. I watched as the tension gradually left his body, his breathing becoming deep and regular. After about 15 minutes, he appeared to be in a trance-like state, though his eyes remained half open. Tom, I'd like you to think about the house in your drawings, Dr. Chen said softly. The house near the pond, can you see it? Yes, Tom responded, his voice distant. It's sunny, summer. Are you outside or inside the house? Outside, by the pond. Tom's face relaxed into a slight smile. There's a dock. They let us feed the ducks sometimes. Who's they, Tom? The grown-ups, Dr. Jim and Miss Lena. Dr. Chen made a note. What are you doing at this house, Tom? It's special therapy because of the accident, because my parents are gone. A shadow crossed his face. I don't like the other kids to see me cry. Dr. Jim says it's okay to cry here. How many times have you been to this house? Tom's brow furrowed. Lots. Weekends. Miss Harris drives me from the hospital. Miss Harris is your social worker? Dr. Chen prompted. Yeah, she's nice. She waits while I do my sessions, then takes me back. Can you tell me about one of your sessions with Dr. Jim? Tom shifted slightly in the chair. We talk about the accident, about Mom and Dad. He has me draw pictures of my feelings. A pause. Sometimes I get really angry or sad, and he gives me special medicine to help me calm down. I exchanged concerned glances with the Caldwells. Medication hadn't been mentioned in any of the records we'd seen. What kind of medicine, Tom? Dr. Chen asked carefully. Pills sometimes, or shots when it's really bad. Tom's voice had flattened. The shots make everything fuzzy. I don't like them. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, and David's jaw tightened. Dr. Chen remained professionally composed, though I could see concern in her eyes. Tom, I'd like you to think about Sister Margaret, the nun who visited St. Catherine's. Did you ever see her at the house by the pond? Tom was silent for so long I thought he might not answer. Then she came once. I was in the special room downstairs. What were you doing in that room? Having a bad day. Dr. Jim said I needed extra help to calm down. Tom's breathing had quickened slightly. They gave me medicine. I was on the bed. Sister Margaret came in with Dr. Jim. She looked angry. Could you hear what they were saying? They thought I was asleep. Sister Margaret said, this isn't what the program was supposed to be. She said, the diocese won't stand for this. Dr. Jim told her she was overreacting. Tom's voice grew fainter. They went into the hallway. They were yelling. What happened next, Tom? Dr. Chen prompted gently. I don't know. The medicine made me sleep. Tom's face suddenly contorted. But later I saw. He began breathing rapidly, his hands gripping the armrests. You're safe, Tom, Dr. Chen said firmly. Whatever you're remembering, you're safe now. You can observe it without reliving it. Tom nodded jerkily. I woke up. It was dark. I heard noises upstairs. I wasn't supposed to leave the room, but I was scared. The tension in the room was palpable as we all leaned forward. I went upstairs. There were two men with Dr. Jim in his office. Sister Margaret was there too. Tom's voice dropped to a whisper. She was on the floor. There was blood, so much blood. Sarah gasped. David moved to stand, but Dr. Chen held up a hand, silently urging him to remain seated. What did the men look like, Tom? She asked, her voice steady. Big. One had a beard. They were wearing dark clothes. Tom's breathing was shallow now. Dr. Jim saw me in the doorway. He looked scared. He told the men, take care of the kid. Tom began trembling. Dr. Chen immediately shifted her approach. Tom, I want you to step back from this memory now. Imagine you're watching it on a screen, and you can turn the screen off. You're safe here in my office. Your parents are here. Mr. Brennan is here. Gradually, Tom's breathing slowed. Dr. Chen continued speaking in soothing tones. guiding him back to a calmer state before beginning the process of bringing him out of hypnosis. When his eyes finally opened fully, they were filled with tears. "I saw her die," he said, his voice breaking. "I saw Sister Margaret die, and I never told anyone." The room erupted into motion. Sarah rushed to embrace her son, David close behind. Dr. Chen moved to her desk, stopping the recording. And I stood frozen, the implications of Tom's recovered memory thundering through my mind. If what Tom remembered was accurate, Sister Margaret had been murdered at Walden House, and Dr. James Whitman was involved. I stepped into the hallway and called Lieutenant Rivera immediately. "We need to stop that interview with Whitman," I said, without preamble. Tom just remembered witnessing Sister Margaret's murder at Walden House. Whitman was there, along with 2 unidentified men. "Jesus," Rivera breathed. "The interview's scheduled for 11. I'll have officers detain him now before he's warned of the new developments." "What about the house?" "We need to search it again." "I'll get a warrant based on the new testimony. Meet me at the station in an hour." I returned to Dr. Chen's office to find Tom sitting up, pale but composed, as his father poured him a glass of water from a carafe on the side table. "Lieutenant Rivera is getting a warrant to search Walden House again," I told them, "and they're detaining Dr. Whitman." "Will Tom need to give a formal statement?" Sarah asked, her arm protectively around her son's shoulders. "Eventually, yes," I confirmed. "But not right away. Dr. Chen's recording will help for now." Dr. Chen joined the conversation. "I should caution that recovered memories under hypnosis aren't always admissible as evidence in court. They'll need corroboration. If Sister Margaret was killed at Walden House, there should be physical evidence," I said, "even after 9 years." Tom looked up, his eyes red but determined. "I want to go there," he said firmly. "I think I could remember more if I saw the place again." His parents started to protest, but Dr. Chen intervened. "Actually, being in the physical space can sometimes trigger additional memories. It's called context-dependent memory." She turned to Tom. "But only if you feel emotionally prepared for that." "I need to do this," Tom insisted. "I've been carrying this without knowing it for 9 years. I need to see it through." After further discussion, it was agreed that Tom would accompany us to Walden House once the police had secured the scene, but only to the grounds, not inside until investigators cleared it. Dr. Chen offered to come along for psychological support. As we prepared to leave, Tom pulled me aside again. "Mr. Brennan," he said quietly, "there's something else I remembered that I didn't say in front of my parents." I felt a chill at his serious expression. "What is it, Tom?" "After Doctor Jim saw me when he told those men to take care of the kid, I ran. I ran out the back door and into the woods. They chased me." His voice dropped to a whisper. "I hid in a hollow tree by the pond until morning. When I came out, everyone was gone. Miss Harris found me and took me back to the hospital. I told her I got lost playing hide and seek. You never told anyone what you saw." Tom shook his head, tears welling again. "Doctor Jim visited me at the hospital the next day. He said if I ever told anyone what happened, the same thing would happen to me. He said no one would believe a traumatized kid anyway." He wiped his eyes. I think I made myself forget. Until now." I placed my hands on his shoulders, looking directly into his eyes. "You're not that frightened child anymore, Tom. We believe you, and we're going to make sure Dr. Whitman pays for what he did." As we left the office, the weight of Tom's revelation settled over me. A 9-year-old murder. A corrupt doctor. A brave nun who had discovered something terrible and paid with her life. And through it all, the resilient spirit of a boy who had survived unimaginable trauma, only to find himself facing it again 9 years later through the mysterious workings of his own mind. The crayon drawings that had started our journey suddenly made perfect sense. Tom's subconscious had been trying to tell him something all along. Now, the question was, would there still be evidence to prove what really happened to Sister Margaret Ryan? The Boston Police Department's headquarters buzzed with activity when I arrived. Lieutenant Rivera met me in the lobby, his expression grim but determined. "Whitman's in custody," he said as we walked briskly toward the elevator. He came in voluntarily for the interview, completely unaware of the new developments. When my guys told him he was being detained pending a murder investigation, he almost collapsed. Has he asked for a lawyer? Immediately, a smart move on his part. The elevator doors opened on the 3rd floor. We've got a team assembling for the search of Walden House. The warrant just came through. In the Major Crimes Unit, a conference room had been transformed into an operations center. A large floor plan of Walden House was taped to one wall, alongside photos of the property and Sister Margaret. "Michael, this is Detective Sofia Rodriguez." Rivera introduced me to a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s. "She's our forensics specialist. She'll be leading the search team." Rodriguez shook my hand firmly. Lieutenant Rivera briefed me on the recovered memory testimony. 9 years is a long time, but if there was a violent crime in that house, there's a good chance something was missed in the initial search. "They weren't looking for a murder scene then," I pointed out. "Just signs of Sister Margaret's presence." "Exactly. Plus, we have advantages now that weren't available 9 years ago. Ground-penetrating radar, more sensitive luminol testing, advanced DNA recovery techniques." She gestured to the floor plan. "Based on the boy's testimony, we'll focus on the office area first, then methodically work through the entire house, including pulling up floorboards if necessary." "What about the current owners?" I asked. "The Northeastern Mindfulness Institute?" "They've been notified and are cooperating fully," Rivera said. "They've canceled all retreats for the next week and given us complete access." "Tom Caldwell wants to visit the property," I informed them. "His therapist thinks it might trigger additional memories that could help the investigation." Rivera and Rodriguez exchanged glances. "Once we've secured and initially processed the scene," Rodriguez said, "no earlier than tomorrow, and he stays outside while we're working the interior." Agreed. His parents and therapist will accompany him. The search team departed within the hour. 3 forensic specialists, 4 evidence technicians, and 6 uniformed officers. Rivera and I would follow separately after he completed some paperwork. "What about Whitman?" I asked as we headed to his car an hour later. "Any chance of getting a confession?" Rivera shook his head. "His lawyer's advising complete silence, but we're building the case. Financial records show Sister Margaret had flagged irregularities in Whitman's billing to Catholic charities just days before her disappearance. And we've identified one of his former assistants from Walden House who might be willing to talk." The drive to Lincoln was tense with anticipation. When we arrived, the property was transformed. Police vehicles lined the driveway, yellow crime scene tape surrounded the house, and officers in uniform patrolled the perimeter. Rodriguez met us on the front porch, already dressed in Tyvek coveralls. "We've started with Dr. Whitman's former office based on the building plans from that period," she reported. "Current owners converted it to a meditation room, but the basic structure is unchanged." She led us inside, where evidence technicians were carefully removing floorboards in what had once been Whitman's office. "We found this almost immediately," Rodriguez said, pointing to a dark stain on the subfloor that had been exposed. "It's consistent with blood that seeped through the floorboards and was never properly cleaned. We're testing it now, but given the location, it matches Tom's memory, I finished, staring at the stain. The thought that we were looking at Sister Margaret's blood, preserved all these years beneath new flooring, was sobering. "What about the basement?" Rivera asked. The boy mentioned a special room downstairs. "Working on that next," Rodriguez said. "Preliminary examination shows one room that was originally secured with an unusual lock system, not standard for a therapy center." We followed her downstairs to a small room at the far end of the basement. Unlike the rest of the modernized building, this space retained an institutional feel, windowless with concrete walls and a heavy door. "Current owners use it for storage," Rodriguez explained. "But look at the door frame." She pointed to marks in the metal frame where additional hardware had once been mounted. Someone removed a serious locking mechanism here, and there are holes in the concrete where a bed or restraint system might have been bolted to the floor. A chill ran through me as I imagined young Tom in this room, drugged and frightened. "This wasn't a therapy program," I said quietly. "It was something else entirely." "We're thinking the same," Rivera agreed, "but we need more evidence to prove it." The search continued throughout the day. By evening, Rodriguez's team had collected dozens of samples from the office area and basement, along with photographs, measurements, and preliminary luminol tests that revealed additional blood traces invisible to the naked eye. "It's going to take time to process everything," she told us as daylight faded. "But I can tell you this, someone definitely died in that office. The blood volume indicators are consistent with a fatal injury." "How soon can we bring Tom to the property?" I asked. "Tomorrow morning should be fine. We'll have the interior work done by then, and we'll be focusing on the grounds." Rodriguez removed her protective gear. "Just keep him away from the active search areas." Rivera and I drove back to Boston in contemplative silence. The evidence was mounting, but we both knew a 9-year-old murder case would be challenging to prosecute, especially one based partially on recovered memories. "We need to find those other 2 men Tom mentioned," Rivera said finally. "Whitman didn't act alone. And we need to understand what was really happening at Walden House," I added. "Why was Whitman medicating children like Tom? What was Sister Margaret investigating? The assistant we tracked down might help with that. Rodriguez is interviewing her tomorrow morning." Rivera glanced at me. "How's the boy holding up?" "Better than you'd expect. He's got good parents and professional support." I stared out at the darkening landscape. "But this is a lot to process. Remembering a murder you witnessed as a child, realizing you've been carrying that trauma for 9 years. Kids are resilient," Rivera said, "and solving this might finally give him peace." I hoped he was right. Tomorrow would bring Tom face to face with the location of his recovered memory, a critical test of both the accuracy of his recollection and his emotional fortitude. As we approached Boston, its skyline glittering against the night sky, I found myself thinking about Sister Margaret. Had she gone to Walden House that day suspecting what she might find? Had she known the risk she was taking? Whatever the truth, her courage in investigating Whitman's program had cost her life. But 9 years later, it might finally bring her justice. The following morning dawned clear and cold, a perfect New England autumn day. I met the Caldwells at their home, where Dr. Chen had already arrived to prepare Tom for the visit to Walden House. "We've discussed coping strategies if the memories become overwhelming," she explained as we gathered in the living room. "Tom understands he can leave at any time." Tom himself appeared remarkably composed, dressed in jeans and a Harvard sweatshirt, his expression resolute. "I'm ready," he said simply when I asked how he was feeling. We traveled in 2 cars, the Caldwells and Dr. Chen in their SUV, while I rode with Lieutenant Rivera, who had picked me up en route. During the drive, Rivera updated me on the latest developments. Rodriguez's team found more evidence overnight, he said, keeping his voice low. Traces of blood on the basement wall that had been painted over, and they identified tool marks on the property consistent with digging. You think Sister Margaret's body might be buried there? I asked, equally quiet. It's possible. Ground-penetrating radar team is on site now, focusing on the wooded area behind the house. When we arrived at Walden House, the police presence had intensified. The yellow crime scene tape had been extended to encompass a larger portion of the property, and a specialized van with radar equipment was parked near the tree line. Detective Rodriguez met us at the perimeter. We've completed the interior work, she informed us. The boy can access the grounds, but needs to stay clear of the areas we're currently examining in the woods. I made introductions all around, then Rodriguez pulled me and Rivera aside. There's something you should know, she said in a low voice. We found a disturbed area about 50 yards into the woods. The radar shows something approximately 6 feet down. Have you started excavation? Rivera asked. Teams assembling now. Should begin within the hour. She glanced toward Tom, who was standing with his parents near the pond. Might want to keep him away from that section. We rejoined the others. Dr. Chen suggested Tom start by simply walking the grounds, getting reacquainted with the space before attempting to access specific memories. Take your time, she advised. Let the surroundings speak to you naturally. Tom nodded and began walking slowly around the pond, his parents following at a respectful distance. I hung back with Rivera and Dr. Chen, watching as Tom oriented himself to the environment. After circling the pond, Tom stopped suddenly, staring intently at a large oak tree near the water's edge. He approached it slowly, reaching out to touch the gnarled trunk. This is it, he said when we caught up to him. This is where I hid that night. There was a hollow space here. He indicated a section of the trunk that had since grown over. I was small enough to fit inside. You ran from the house directly to this tree? Dr. Chen asked. Tom closed his eyes, concentrating. Number I ran into the woods first. They were chasing me. I could hear them calling. I kept running until I couldn't anymore. Then I doubled back toward the water because I knew the house was near the pond. His eyes opened. I stayed here until morning, then I followed the shoreline back to the house. That's when Ms. Harris found me. Do you remember which direction you ran into the woods? Rivera asked carefully. Tom turned, orienting himself. Then he pointed toward the exact area where Rodriguez's team was preparing to excavate. That way, there's a path. Rivera and I exchanged glances. The coincidence was too significant to ignore. Tom, I said gently, the police have found an area of disturbed ground in that direction. They're going to excavate it soon. His face paled slightly, but his voice remained steady. You think that's where they buried her? It wasn't a question. Sarah moved closer to her son, placing a protective arm around his shoulders, while David stepped forward. I think that's enough for today, he said firmly. Tom has been extremely cooperative, but this is becoming too intense. I want to see the house, Tom said suddenly. Inside, the room downstairs where they kept me. Tom, I don't think that's a good idea, Sarah began. I need to do this, Mom. His voice cracked slightly, but his determination was evident. I need to see it once, with all of you there, so it's not just this scary place in my head anymore. Dr. Chen intervened. From a therapeutic perspective, confronting the physical space in a safe, supported environment can be beneficial. It removes some of the power the memory holds. After further discussion and confirmation from Rodriguez that the interior was no longer an active processing scene, it was agreed that Tom could briefly enter the house. Rivera would accompany us, along with Dr. Chen and both parents. The interior of Walden House was brightly lit, a stark contrast to the shadowy place of Tom's memories. He walked tentatively through the first floor, pausing occasionally as if listening to echoes from the past. Dr. Jim's office was here, he said, stopping outside what was now a meditation room. The floorboards had been partially removed during the investigation, revealing the stained subfloor beneath. Tom stared at it for a long moment, then continued down the hallway. When we reached the basement stairs, he hesitated. Dr. Chen moved beside him. "We can stop any time, Tom. This is entirely your choice." "No, I need to see it." He descended slowly, one hand trailing along the wall for support. The basement hallway was illuminated by portable police lights that cast harsh shadows. Tom moved unerringly toward the small room at the end, stopping outside the heavy door. "This is it," he said quietly. "The special room." Rivera opened the door, revealing the sparse concrete space now emptied of the retreat center's storage items. Evidence markers dotted the walls and floor where Rodriguez's team had taken samples. Tom stood in the doorway, not entering but taking in every detail. "The bed was against that wall," he said, pointing. "They would strap me down sometimes when the medicine made me agitated. That's what Dr. Jim called it." His parents' expressions reflected horror and heartbreak, but they remained silent, allowing Tom this moment of reclamation. "Sister Margaret found me in here," Tom continued. "That last day, she was so angry when she saw me strapped down. She yelled at Dr. Jim, said she was going to report him, shut down the whole program." He turned to Rivera. "That's why they killed her, because she was going to expose whatever they were really doing to us kids." "How many other children were in the program, Tom?" Rivera asked gently. "5 or 6 that I saw. We weren't supposed to talk to each other much. Some seemed really out of it all the time." Tom stepped back from the doorway. "I want to leave now." We climbed back upstairs in silence. As we emerged into the sunlight, a commotion near the woods caught our attention. Rodriguez was jogging toward the excavation site, where officers were gathering. "Wait here," Rivera instructed, following her. Tom turned to his parents. They found something. "Let's go back to the cars," David suggested, but Tom shook his head. I need to see this through." Before anyone could stop him, he began walking toward the activity in the woods. After a moment's hesitation, we all followed. By the time we caught up, Rivera was in heated conversation with Rodriguez near the excavation site, where a shallow pit had been dug. He broke off when he saw us approaching. "You shouldn't be here," he said firmly. "What did you find?" I asked. Rivera and Rodriguez exchanged glances before she answered. "Human remains, wrapped in plastic and buried approximately 6 feet deep, just as expected for a clandestine burial." "Sister Margaret," Tom said softly. "We won't know the identity until forensic examination," Rodriguez cautioned. "But given the circumstances..." She was interrupted by a commotion at the front of the property. Officers were shouting, and a car engine revved loudly. Rivera's radio crackled with urgent voices. "Lieutenant, we have an intruder who breached the perimeter. Male, late 60s, driving a blue sedan. He's fled up the driveway toward the main road." Rivera grabbed his radio. "Get a description, and get units on the access roads." More reports flooded in. The car had crashed into a police vehicle at the entrance, then continued onto the main road despite a damaged front end. Officers were in pursuit. Who would be crazy enough to drive into an active crime scene? David wondered aloud. Someone desperate, I said, a suspicion forming. Someone who just found out we discovered the body. Rivera was already on his phone. I need an officer sent to check on Dr. James Whitman immediately. He should be in custody awaiting questioning. He listened for a moment, his expression darkening. What do you mean he's not there? He was denied bail. He ended the call, turning to us with grim certainty. Whitman's lawyer got the bail decision reversed this morning on a technicality. He was released 2 hours ago. And somehow he found out we were searching here today, I concluded. We need to get you all out of here now, Rivera insisted, already ushering us toward our vehicles. If Whitman's desperate enough to crash through a police barrier, he was cut off by his radio again. Lieutenant, suspect vehicle spotted heading back toward the property on Parker Road. Officers in pursuit, but he's driving erratically. That's the back access road, Rodriguez said, already moving. It connects to the service entrance on the north side of the property. Get everyone to their vehicles now, Rivera ordered. Rodriguez, coordinate evacuation of all personnel from the north section. We hurried toward the parking area, Rivera on his radio requesting additional units. The Caldwells moved protectively around Tom, with Dr. Chen and I flanking them. We had almost reached the cars when the sound of tires on gravel made us turn. A blue sedan with a crumpled front end came careening around the side of the house, bypassing the main entrance entirely. It skidded to a stop about 30 yards from us, and an elderly man emerged, his once distinguished features contorted with desperation. Dr. Whitman, I said, recognizing him from photos. Rivera drew his weapon. James Whitman, Boston Police, put your hands where I can see them. Instead, Whitman reached back into his car and pulled out something that made my blood run cold, a hunting rifle. He leveled it in our direction. Get down, Rivera shouted, positioning himself between Whitman and our group. We dropped to the ground, David covering Tom with his body, while Sarah and Dr. Chen huddled nearby. I stayed low, but kept my eyes on Whitman, who was advancing slowly, the rifle unsteady in his hands. 9 years, he shouted, his voice cracking with emotion. 9 years I've lived with this. It wasn't supposed to happen. We just wanted her to listen to reason. Rivera maintained his stance, weapon trained on Whitman. Drop the rifle, James. Don't make this worse than it already is. Worse? Whitman laughed bitterly. They found her, didn't they? It's over for me. His gaze shifted, focusing on something behind us. You! You're the Brenner boy. Tom had raised his head slightly, his eyes meeting Whitman's across the distance. You remember now, don't you? Whitman continued, taking another step forward. You saw everything. You were supposed to be sedated. None of this would have happened if you'd just stayed asleep. Put down the weapon, Rivera commanded again. In the distance, sirens wailed as backup approached. Whitman seemed to realize his time was running out. His expression hardened as he raised the rifle more deliberately. I'm not going to prison, he said with sudden clarity, and I'm not letting him testify. Everything happened at once. Whitman swung the rifle toward our position. Rivera fired 2 shots in rapid succession. The impact threw Whitman backward, the rifle discharging harmlessly into the air as he fell. Officers swarmed the scene, securing Whitman's weapon and calling for medical assistance. Rivera holstered his weapon and turned to us. Is everyone all right? Shaken but unhurt, we confirmed we were uninjured. Tom was pale but composed, supported between his parents. He admitted it, Tom said quietly. Everyone heard him. Rivera nodded. Yes, and combined with the physical evidence and your testimony, it's over, Tom. He won't hurt anyone else. As paramedics worked on Whitman nearby, preparing to transport him to a hospital under police guard, I reflected on the incredible sequence of events that had led us to this moment. A 9-year-old crime, exposed through the mysterious workings of a young man's mind. A brave nun who had given her life trying to protect vulnerable children. And a corrupt doctor whose sins had finally caught up with him. Later, we would learn the full story. Whitman had been using the children in his program as test subjects for experimental sedatives, falsifying data and billing insurance companies and Catholic charities for treatments never properly administered. Sister Margaret had discovered discrepancies in the financial records and visited Walden House to investigate, finding Tom and other children being improperly medicated. When she threatened to expose the operation, Whitman and 2 pharmaceutical representatives who were funding his illicit research had panicked. The confrontation turned violent, resulting in Sister Margaret's death. But in that moment, standing in the autumn sunlight as police secured the scene, what mattered most was the look of peace slowly spreading across Tom's face. The burden of an unremembered trauma finally lifted, the mystery of his persistent drawings at last resolved. "It's over," I told him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You helped bring her justice, Tom." 9 years, he said softly, echoing Whitman's words. "Why did I start remembering now?" Dr. Chen, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "The mind protects itself until it's ready to process trauma. You're stronger now, more supported, more capable of handling the truth." Tom nodded, then looked toward the woods where Sister Margaret's remains had been discovered. "She tried to help me. She died trying to protect us." "And now you've returned the favor," I said. "You protected her memory. You brought her home." As we finally left Walden House that day, I knew the story wasn't entirely finished. There would be a proper burial for Sister Margaret, a trial for Whitman and the identification of his accomplices, healing for Tom and perhaps other children who had been victimized by Whitman's program. But the central mystery, the one that had begun with a nun's disappearance and a child's crayon drawing, had been solved. And in solving it, we had not only found justice for Sister Margaret Ryan, but had also freed a young man from the prison of an unremembered past. 1 year later, I stood beside Tom Caldwell in Mount Benedict Cemetery as Sister Margaret Ryan's remains were finally laid to rest. The autumn day was crisp and bright, golden leaves drifting down around the gathered mourners. Sisters from St. Mary's Convent, staff from St. Catherine's Orphanage, officers who had worked the case, and the Caldwell family. Cardinal Francis O'Malley led the service, his words honoring Sister Margaret's dedication to children and her ultimate sacrifice in their defense. "Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends," he quoted, the words hanging poignantly in the clear air. Tom, now 17 and taller than me, stood solemn and composed between his parents. The past year had been challenging but transformative for him. Regular therapy with Dr. Chen had helped him process not only the recovered memories of Sister Margaret's murder but also the earlier trauma of his parents' death and the subsequent abuse he'd suffered at Walden House. The trial of Dr. James Whitman had concluded 3 months earlier. Despite the 9-year gap between crime and prosecution, the evidence had been overwhelming. Whitman's desperate actions at Walden House during the investigation, witnessed by multiple police officers and civilians, had effectively sealed his fate. He was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole. His 2 accomplices, pharmaceutical executives who had funded Whitman's illegal drug trials on traumatized children, had been identified through financial records and eventually pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for testimony. The full extent of their operation had shocked the public. Dozens of vulnerable children had been used as unwitting test subjects for experimental sedatives, their trauma reactions documented and data falsified to suggest successful treatments. As we had suspected, Sister Margaret discovered financial irregularities while reviewing Catholic Charities accounts and began quietly investigating Walden House. When she found children like Tom being improperly medicated and restrained, she confronted Whitman, threatening to expose the entire operation. That confrontation cost her life, but her courage had eventually led to justice, albeit 9 years delayed. After the graveside service concluded, the mourners gradually dispersed. Lieutenant Rivera, recently promoted to captain, approached us, shaking Tom's hand warmly. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I'm okay," Tom replied, and I could see it was true. The haunted look that had shadowed his eyes for so long had finally lifted. "It feels right to be here, to see it through to the end." Rivera nodded. "The department received the final report from the review board yesterday. All findings support our actions during the investigation. The case is officially closed." "And the other children?" I asked. This had been a particular concern for Tom, finding the other victims of Whitman's program. "We've identified 17 in total," Rivera said. "The diocese has established a support fund for them, covering therapy and educational expenses. Most have been notified, though some families chose not to reopen those wounds." Sister Josephine approached, her aged face lined with both grief and peace. "Michael, Tom, would you walk with me a moment?" We followed her to a quiet corner of the cemetery, where spring flowers had been planted around a simple memorial bench. "The convent has something for you, Tom," she said, removing a small package from her bag. "When we were going through Sister Margaret's personal effects, we found this. Given recent events, we believe she would have wanted you to have it." Tom unwrapped the package carefully, revealing a small, hand-carved wooden box, identical to the one he had found at the yard sale that had triggered his drawings and dreams. "This can't be," he whispered, opening the lid. Inside lay a silver medal, twin to the one Tom had discovered. But this one had something additional, a small handwritten note tucked beside it. Tom unfolded it with trembling fingers. In Sister Margaret's neat handwriting were the words, "For Tommy, may you find peace in truth. Your safe place is within you." She must have intended to give this to you, Sister Josephine explained, perhaps as part of her plan to help the children from Whitman's program. We'll never know for certain. Tom closed his hand around the medal, tears welling in his eyes. All this time, my drawings weren't just memories. They were her, trying to tell me something. I placed my hand on his shoulder, remembering Sister Margaret's words from her journal. Sometimes faith leads us down unexpected paths. The trick is to keep following, even when you can't see where you're going. 6 months later, I received an envelope in the mail. Inside was a graduation announcement for Tom's high school commencement, along with a handwritten note inviting me to a small celebration afterward at the Caldwell's home. When I arrived, I found their backyard transformed with strings of lights and tables set for dinner. Sarah greeted me with a warm hug. "He's graduating with honors," she said proudly, "and he's been accepted to Boston College for the fall." "Psychology major?" I guessed. She nodded. "With a minor in art therapy. He says he wants to help other kids who've been through trauma." Tom appeared in his cap and gown, his face breaking into a genuine smile when he saw me. "Mr. B, you made it." "Wouldn't have missed it," I assured him. He led me to a quiet corner of the yard where an easel stood covered with a cloth. "I wanted to show you something. My final project for AP Art." He removed the cloth, revealing a painting that took my breath away. It showed Walden House, not the dark, threatening place of his memories, but transformed. The gray-shingled building was bathed in gentle sunlight, the pond reflecting a clear blue sky. And on the porch stood a figure in a nun's habit, her face peaceful and kind, wire-rimmed glasses catching the light. "Sister Margaret," I said softly. "My art teacher said I should paint something that represented transformation," Tom explained. This felt right, taking back the place that held so much darkness and reclaiming it with light. I studied the painting, noting how he'd captured Sister Margaret's gentle essence perfectly. "It's beautiful, Tom. She would be proud of how far you've come." "I still dream about the house sometimes," he admitted, "but they're different dreams now, peaceful, like she's watching over it, and me." As the celebration continued around us, I reflected on the extraordinary journey we'd shared. A mystery that began with a child's crayon drawing had uncovered a murder, exposed a criminal enterprise, brought justice to a woman who died protecting the vulnerable, and ultimately helped heal the wounds of a young man who had carried an unbearable secret for 9 years. The case of Sister Margaret Ryan had changed all of us. It had shown me the resilience of the human spirit, the persistence of truth even when buried, and the power of memories, even those too painful to consciously recall, to find their way into the light. Tom had discovered something profound through his ordeal, that confronting the darkest chapters of our past is often the only way to write a brighter future. His crayon drawings, once mysterious harbingers of a forgotten trauma, had become the first brushstrokes of a new beginning. As evening fell and stars appeared above the Caldwell's backyard, I thought again of Sister Margaret's words, "Your safe place is within you." Tom had found that place at last, not in hiding from his memories, but in bringing them into the light and transforming them through courage, truth, and the healing power of justice, long delayed but finally served. And in that transformation, the nun who had vanished after visiting an orphanage 9 years ago had accomplished her final mission, saving a child not just from danger, but from the prison of an unremembered past. The end.